So without further ado, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So we've mostly got a UK crowd this evening, 58%, educators, educational leaders, or people working within the education sector are most of our delegates today. So thank you so very much. And we've got 67% of the delegates who identify as being part of the LGBTIQ community. So thank you so very, very much. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome and good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all of the delegates that are joining today's conference around the world. And you've got an absolutely amazing agenda lined up for the next couple of days, so I think it'll be a really fascinating conference. So my name is Sharon Haig and I lead Pearson School Business. We develop qualifications and teaching and learning resources for both primary and secondary schools, and I'm also the executive sponsor for Spectrum, our LGBTQ+ employee network. I'm really delighted to be here today to represent Pearson, who is sponsoring Pride in Education conference. And I'd just like to sort of share a few kind of words and thoughts about a subject that's very close to my heart, which is equality and inclusion in education. Equality and inclusion are not side issues, they're not afterthoughts, they're not secondary considerations. They absolutely go to the heart of what education is all about, and that is about giving children and young people the opportunity to fulfill their true potential. It's not long ago, 1967, in fact, when people like Alan Turing were being persecuted and prosecuted under the Sexual Offences Act. And whilst much has changed since then, and there have been significant strides made in areas like marriage and hate crimes, there are still far too many that continue to suffer from intolerance. And of course, schools are a reflection of our wider society. Stonewall research tells us that homophobic and transphobic bullying continues to be an issue, and there are still far too many children that suffer the experience of these real problems. As someone who spends much of their time in schools, I often think back to my own school days, and I remember, you know, in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, anyone that was different was excluded rather than included. It must have been so difficult for those children to feel comfortable and happy at school, let alone achieve their full potential. And as educators, as someone who spent their career in education, we can all help children that might be in that position now every day. And Pearson can and does play its part. Now, I can't pretend that, you know, we've got all the answers and even that it's very easy. But the truth is that if all of us in education can take these small steps, then we can really help to foster that inclusive learning environment that we all seek and aspire to for young people. As a big organisation, Pearson has taken its part, and I can just share a couple of very short examples of things that we've done. So Pearson is part of the Joint Council for Qualifications, and as a group of awarding organisations, we agree common rules on how exam certificates are issued. I'm sure, you know, many people on the call receiving those much worked for certificates that show the qualifications we received at school. But what happens if you choose to, you have gender assignment as an adult? A few years ago, Pearson implemented a brand new process that does not require applicants to provide evidence of a gender change. And we set up a dedicated team to support people through the process of making sure all of the records that they have that relate to their qualifications reflect their identities as adults. We're also very proud to have sponsored Stonewall to produce 2 inclusive guides, one for secondary school teachers and a second for primary schools. These guides have given practical advice for teachers and some top tips and sample lesson plans that are available for free for any primary or secondary school teacher to use to help make sure that they're providing inclusive lessons. We then use those guides and the work that we did with Stonewall to help us develop our own guidelines for LGBTQ+ inclusion. And these guidelines are now used by our entire editorial community within Pearson and our authors to help make sure that all of the teaching and learning materials that we produce are inclusive. We adopted those in the UK 3 years ago, and we're currently working with a global team to implement these globally for everything that is produced across Pearson. And we'll work together with so the guidelines that we have on gender stereotyping and on race and ethnicity. I know tomorrow afternoon there's a group of teachers, a panel of teachers that will be reviewing these guidelines for us, and I'm really looking forward to the feedback that you provide us that can help really further improve these and take these forward. So it's all these little small steps that will help us together travel a long way to achieve that ambition of really helping children make the progress that they deserve in their learning. So thank you for everyone on this call is doing. I am sure you will have an amazing conference, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the poem recited by Poet Laureate Trudy Howson. It's a real first for us. Pearson commissioned it, and I really hope that we can use that poem in the work that we do with thousands of schools, both in the UK and around the world. So keep on taking those small steps. Have an amazing conference, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. I'd like now to invite Mike Adams, who has given us so much support since the very beginning of Pride in Education. Mike, haven't you? You were there from the very beginning.
The very beginning, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here and support you in any way we can. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laila, for putting this incredible event together. Great. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, boys and girls and everything in between. We're very happy to be supporting this event with Zoom. So I work for Zoom. My name is Mike Adams. I'm based in London. I'm a Zoom partner manager looking after all our partners and resellers across Europe. And I'm also the leader of the Zoom Pride group, which is our internal LGBTQ+ employee network with more than 200 members around the world. And so we're always happy to support all LGBT+ organizations in any way we can, including with Zoom technology. But today's topic is really all about education. And today we've got more than 125,000 schools and universities around the world using Zoom. More than 70% of universities in the UK are using Zoom today. So effectively, we have a massive experience working with schools and universities, and we want to help them in any way we can. And so Zoom has really built a single platform for education to look at all different use cases where we can help teachers and students and educators in all different scenarios. So whether it's supporting remote students joining lectures, whether it's students collaborating with each other, whether it's professor work groups, or having guest lectures from different universities, collaboration between universities. So you've got really lots of use cases where Zoom can be really a very useful tool to help these educational institutions. And let's talk about some of the features Zoom has built specifically for education. And one really standout feature is called virtual breakout rooms, which means that as a teacher, you can create small virtual breakout rooms where you split your students up in small groups where they can work on an assignment, and then you can bring them back into the main virtual classroom to share their findings. And this really creates that virtual experience of students working together on assignments. It really creates a much more dynamic learning experience. Another way to really engage your students is to create polls and do polling as often as possible. So as we start this webinar with Laila sending a poll to all participants, immediately you felt engaged. You have to click, you have to answer, you have to give feedback. It's really a great way to engage your audience. Another one is to provide non-verbal reactions, what we call reactions. So in the Zoom toolbar, every student can just click on reactions and send a small emoji reaction to say if they're happy or not happy, if they want to raise their hand, if they want the teacher to speak faster or slower. So this really creates that dynamic experience for students. And then using slides as virtual backgrounds. So you can actually use your entire PowerPoint presentation as your virtual background behind you. So it creates the impression the teacher is in front of the presentation. It looks like a TV show, like you're a TV presenter. It really makes your whole presentation more dynamic and exciting for students. And then using immersive scenes, which allows your students to be placed on a virtual backdrop as if they were sitting next to each other in a real classroom, instead of having rectangles on your screen. And again, it creates that human connection, that psychological experience of being in a physical classroom, even for remote students. They're going to feel much more engaged. And then we just launched live transcription as we're using today, which means that for every class, your remote students can actually read real-time subtitles of everything you say as a teacher or educator. So for students who are hard of hearing, it can really be a lifesaver. It's also great for your meetings, if you want to record your meetings, to have a transcript of all your recorded training sessions, so people can find those recordings. And effectively, Zoom integrates into lots of LMS systems, learning management solutions, where all these recordings can be managed by the university or the school using Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle to integrate into all these standard educational tools. And then obviously security and privacy is very important when you talk about students and teachers and educational environments. So Zoom has really built the most secure meeting platform on the market today. We launched more than 100 security features last year. And so really we're doubling down, tripling down on security. And some of the examples here is a single security icon, which allows the teacher in the middle of a classroom with one single click to block annotation from all students or to remove obtrusive students who are disrupting the class. Another really great security feature is a video waiting room. So the teacher can see all the students who want to join a class in a virtual waiting room and can either admit them in the class or obviously decline them if they're not proper students. And that's a great security feature for the teacher to really control who gets to join a virtual classroom. Now, let's talk about physical classrooms. When we go to a school or university in person, the idea is to design a really great user experience for students and teachers. So Zoom has designed a classroom experience we call Zoom Rooms. So Zoom Rooms is for a physical boardroom or classroom for a teacher to easily walk in there with one single click, launch a class, make the user interface as simple as possible to make it teacher-proof. Even a teacher can use it. It's that simple, where with a single click, they can launch a class. With a single click, they can share the presentation to a big screen, or students can share their work on the screen as well at the same time. And Zoom Rooms also include digital signage. That means you can display some information on the screens in the classrooms or the hallways, like the menu of the cafeteria, maybe school information, maybe if there's an emergency alert, you can display that information on the screens as well. And then Zoom Room provides classroom analytics. So you can see in every classroom how many students are physically there in person, look at the temperature in the classroom, the humidity, and generate reports on this classroom utilization to know how many students actually showed up in class, right? So these are some examples of ways you can design classrooms for this new hybrid learning environment, where some students are physically in person in the classroom, but other students are remote. And how can the teacher manage both the remote students and the in-person students in the best possible way? So in this example, you can put a Zoom Room screen in the corner where you can see the remote students and the local students. This is for a bigger classroom. You can have the teacher standing on a lectern and having a little cart on wheels with the Zoom Room setup. This is an example for university or a bigger classroom. We've got multiple displays both behind the teacher and in front of the teacher. So the teacher can see the remote students as well as the real students, the physical students in front of them, all with the best possible experience. So there's lots of different ways you can design these classrooms. So Zoom is really all about listening to our customers' feedback. We love our customers. We want happy users, happy teachers, happy students. So if you have any feedback, you want to provide suggestions or feedback, we've got a suggestion box on our website, which is simply zoom.us/feed. And we really listen to your feedback. So thank you so much for providing feedback. So if you want to learn more about how to use Zoom in education, we've got a dedicated website for teachers, which is zoom.us/education. And there's loads of articles to help you teach on Zoom, to set up the Zoom rooms, the classrooms, and also virtual students. And these are really great articles written specifically for teachers. So with that, I'll open the floor to a Q&A. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar. So I hope this was useful and I gave you some ideas. If you've got a few questions, we've got a few minutes for questions. I'm absolutely all ears.
Thank you, Mike. I have to say I use Zoom all the time and I've used other platforms. I'm not going to name the competitors, but I find Zoom super user-friendly. The breakout rooms are really easy to set up. You can assign automatically, randomly, let people choose or even upload before the meeting. It's really, really useful. So thank you. I'm just checking the Q&A. Doesn't look like anyone's got any questions at the moment. I've encouraged our delegates to ask questions in the chat as well. But I think we've got all the information that we need. I just want to say thank you so much. This conference wouldn't have been able without your support. Thank you so much. Oh, we've got some feedback in the chat. Thank you, Mike. I love Zoom rooms.
Thank you so much, Terry. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
So we love teachers. We love students. We want to do everything we can to help you. So if you've got any questions popping up in your head later during this whole event, don't hesitate to reach out to Laila or to myself or provide feedback to Zoom on our in our suggestion box. So thank you so much and keep up the good work. We're all here to help you.
And happy Pride.
And happy
Thank
Pride,
you, Mike. Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So we now would like to welcome the phenomenal Daniel Lismore. Daniel, welcome and thank you. You have been such a huge supporter of the conference. You've enabled me to connect with people. You've helped with social media and marketing. And I'm just so grateful. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I just want to say a few words to maybe open this. My name is Daniel Lismore. I'm an artist and an activist. Again, thank you for having me. This means a lot. So I believe in having pride in education. Why it's important is because LGBTQIA+ people exist. We are here. We exist in every culture, continent, country, town, village, religion, faith, background on this planet. Whether they're in or out, we've existed throughout history. And there's been some great people who have been kind of deleted from existence. The characteristics of gay, lesbian, trans, intersex, and asexual is not just found in human beings, it's found in a wide variety of species on this planet. So when people question us, I think they need to, first of all, understand that. And there have been problem solvers, movers, shakers, and some of the greatest minds who have been part of our community, including William Shakespeare and Mal Frith, who was the first celebrity. He was a trans man based in London. There was people like Chevalier Dion. There's been people all throughout history, and their existences have been erased. Unfortunately, we've been here many times before. Generally on this planet, people have been here. We've had these conversations before at different parts, different times throughout the ages. We keep coming back to restarting these conversations because hate prevails over human rights. For example, the Nazis destroying the Museum of Sexology, which was one of the greatest collections of information and artifacts on LGBTQ+ people from all over the world. I'm going to ask you a little question. Why do you think people fear us? So I have a theory that it's because there are so many of us and we are strong in numbers. And I've always believed that. It's something that I've been thinking about for quite a long time. We're everywhere, you know, you can't eradicate us because we're part of humanity. My hopes and dreams one day that all LGBTQ+ people can come out and be themselves. It seems very bleak right now, looking around the world at situations in Libya, Ghana, Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, Yemen, everywhere. But we have to start somewhere. Bad education and misinformation leads to hatred. it also leads to internal hatred. So, I mean, we're seeing this more and more so right now. The communities that we have are being ripped apart, mainly because of lies and vendettas, and poor education about our existences. We're hearing from communities all over the world for the first time. I met Lila and many people in this conference via Clubhouse. This is the first time we've actually heard their voices. It's been remarkable, heartbreaking, it's tragic, and also very moving to know that we can come together as a community and learn from each other. And we have people listening in. We've had even the Russian Federation and the European Parliament and the British Parliament, and people have been coming in and listening to us, having normal conversations about different areas of our lives. We are very privileged in the United Kingdom and in the Western world to have all of these rights, but they are being taken away slowly in many areas like the United Kingdom and in the US. So we need to make people aware in our community, because I don't think people know right now. We need to make use of our privileges for other people, and we can, by always writing to governments and politicians and always being active. As long as we exist, we're going to have to be activists if we want equality. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. So we need to stick together. It's a time to come together, and we are stronger together. It's time to battle internal hatred, and not just internal hatred, the hatred that we face every single day of our lives. That's what we have to face. It's like a really weird concept that we have to live with, and conferences like this, I believe, are going to help. So I'm going to leave you with a little science lesson that the 11-year-old Daniel would have loved to have heard at school. Here's some information about you. This is a science lesson right now. The oxygen and carbon in your body was made from a nuclear fusion in the interior of a star. Much of the iron in your body was forged during a supernova explosion that happened a long time ago and very far away. The hydrogen in your body, in every molecule, is made from the remnants of the Big Bang. Here's a question for you. Another question. If we're all made of stardust, then why do so many of us hate one another? And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Daniel. What an inspirational opening. Bravo. I can see Sue clapping and everything, and people are commenting in the chat. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much. And now I would like to welcome Martin. Martin, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know who you are and the work that you do?
Thank you, Lila. I think it's very, very difficult task to follow Daniel, and how beautifully you mentioned really about first what our communities face, but as well the importance of embracing our identities. I'm Martin, I'm he, him, and I'm the chair of the Youth Steering Committee and board member of ILGA World, which is the International Federation of LGBTI Organizations. And I'm glad to be here today, and I will be particularly speaking about young people as a chair of the Youth Steering Committee as well, and education. And I started my activism in PE education in Bulgaria, actually in sex education, and I was quite younger. And whilst realizing the importance of sex education, particularly in the context of a country like Bulgaria, where there's still no sex education, even now, it won't be probably for another 20, 30 years. I was doing an education that was still not LGBTI inclusive. Even the one I was doing was not inclusive for myself, and I felt that I was left out from it. And today I would like you to actually, that's why in order for us to know the importance of education for queer young people in particular, we need to realize the context as well on global level that education operates within. And So I'll mention some of those particularly violations of our rights, but just to know, trigger warning that some of this content might be quite sensitive and triggering for some people. We know that lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex, queer, non-binary youth, or any young person with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, or sex characteristics face violence across the world and wide range of violent, harmful practices and discriminations, which are aimed at our bodies, rights, lives, and identities. And some of these practices include unethical, non-consensual, medically unnecessary surgeries performed on intersex children and youth, and yet intersex rights are still neglected and ignored in the framework on human rights and harmful practices on international level. Across the world, we know that LGBTIQ youth and adolescents face the harmful practice of conversion therapies as well, which are unscientific, unethical, and in most instances, they are torturous practice. And yet, despite being a torturous practice, they're still commonplace and legal in 100 and over 180 countries, including the UK. And often those practices are also practiced by educational professionals in some of those contexts. LGBTI young women, girls, and non-binary people faced extreme sexual and physical violence in and out of school by their peers and communities, including bullying. And young trans women, particularly young trans women of color, are being murdered at alarming rates across the world, as we see on some of the reports that are coming in, especially now. We know that transgender diverse young people face sterilization requirements and limited access to healthcare, and unfortunately much more. And then COVID came, which has exacerbated the existing inequalities and further isolated queer young people. COVID has disproportionately impacted queer young people across the world and caused additional barriers and discrimination, has driven queer youth issues further into the shadows, disproportional poor mental health, further social isolation, lack of support services, increased homelessness, unemployment, domestic violence as well, as different research across the world has shown us, and it's coming in as we speak. We're left out of safe spaces with no community support, with no family support and state prosecution, with no safe spaces off and online. Education for queer youth is more important than ever. We know that equal access to education is paramount for the ability of LGBTIQ young people to realize their human rights. But however, bullying, harassment, and exclusion in educational institutions is a worldwide problem. As the independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity by the UN says, often driven by stigma and prejudice, rooted in deep cultural beliefs about gender roles, masculinity, and femininity, LGBTIQ students face teasing, name-calling, public ridicule, rumors, intimidation, pushing, hitting, stealing, damaging belongings, obscene notes, social isolation, cyberbullying, physical and sexual assault, and even death threats. And this occurs in classes, playgrounds, toilets, and changing rooms, on the way to and from school, as well as online. And not only is exclusion present in traditional education settings, is also commonplace with other settings outside of school. And we know, for example, the importance of comprehensive sexuality education, and I'm pleased to see United Nations Agency that have been publishing new guidelines which are more 21st century related. But still, even in the new guidelines, I can't see the language of LGBTI inclusion. There's no comprehensive sexuality education if it's no LGBTI inclusive. That's not comprehensive. We know that by the report by IGLU for the Council of Europe's member states, that 68% of LGBTIQ young people across the Council of Europe member states experience homophobic or transphobic violence in school. 80% of students have witnessed negative attitudes towards someone perceived to be LGBT in their school, and 67% hid their sexual orientation or gender identity or expression of risk of being harmed. And we can see that statistic replicated as well by other research such as UNESCO and MAC on global level, and also even more shocking statistic on regional level such as in Africa. There is an anxiety among stakeholders in general to address LGBTIQ youth issues in particular, as they're painted as too sensitive, too political to be addressed. And as we've seen often in recent years, they're not only anxious to speak up, but often we see them weaponized by especially far-right leaders on behalf of the rights of our bodies and lives. We have seen dangerous trends of new legislation being introduced, limiting the information access of LGBTIQ young people and endangering their safety. Only this week, Hungary has introduced a new bill similar to Russian propaganda law, which attacks particularly and targets trans young people's rights. And we've seen that across the world, including in the UK and in the US, happening as we speak. Now more than ever, we need to ensure that queer young people are meaningfully involved at design and implementation of all the programs that impact them, and be part of the decision making at all levels, not being tokenized or weaponized by and used for political gains by either party. Human rights of queer young people, human rights. In the last year, as the Youth Steering Committee, we've been working together with regional and international queer youth organization to set up a new global platform called the Global Queer Youth Network to address the gaps on global level of LGBTIQ young people not being addressed in UN spaces and internationally. And we're pleased that that's being launched now, and we'll be working with those regional international networks in the upcoming years. As part of that, we've partnered together with the United Nations Youth Envoy, the independent expert on sexual orientation, gender identity, Ilga World, and other partners for a series of events happening over the next 7 months, amplifying queer youth voices all across the world at the United Nations in official human rights mechanisms. So LGBTIQ young people are not silent and not too sensitive anymore. We're also going to be focusing on building a strong queer youth movement, as that's often overshadowed by lack of finances, fully reliant on volunteers, and stress for the queer activists. And I'm hoping that we'll use those new few platforms with other queer young people across the world, so we can advocate for fully affirmative, safe LGBTIQ education, so no queer young person or any LGBTIQ person ever is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. It was heartbreaking to hear the stark reality of what's happening around the world. Daniel, any thoughts or comments?
No, I think that was amazing. So thank you for everything that you do, Martin.
Terry is saying that they're battling the Arkansas state legislature, their attempt to stop educational topics of race, class, and gender. The state is attacking trans people and LGBTQ plus people rights. And he shared, Terry, you're very welcome to share this in the chat. I can share that for you. Martin, I want to thank you so much. I know that you haven't been super well, and really, I'm really grateful that you are able to join us tonight. So thank you very much. I would like now to welcome Professor Sue Saunders, activist and inspiration, who is responsible for creating a number of initiatives and co-creating LGBT History Month and Schools Out UK. So Sue, welcome. And
thank you, Lila. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And thanks all the other amazing speakers. It is so amazing to be here at this weekend. It does feel so important. We are faced with a very difficult time. And I think several of the speakers have touched on just how problematic we're faced with at the moment, both in this country and abroad. Patriarchy is alive and well and reigning. And when patriarchy reigns, we all get wet. In other words, we all get oppressed. Now, when I say the word patriarchy, I mean white, middle class, cis, men who are able-bodied and who are heterosexual. Now, I'm aware that not everybody fits that group, either in our own government or across the world, but there are people there who want to be part of that group and forget where they're from to link up and use that power. And patriarchy has this wonderful ability of actually making people not see their own reality. So they control the culture, they control the media, and of course they control the curriculum. And it's our job as teachers to be torches and shine a light. So we have to shine a light to make sure that all the wonderful identities of us and the students that we teach can be seen. We can raise a rainbow umbrella to stop that rain and to start thinking about how can we make sure that all our students can actually see who they are. Sharon has already touched on, and so has Martin, and so has Daniel, the fact that when we were at school, we didn't see who they were. I mean, you can see my grey hair. I've hit 73 this year. I don't quite know how it happened, but when I go back and look at my childhood and my schools, the irony was there were LGBT people there in my curriculum, but of course I was never told about them. So I was lied to by omission. And that's what patriarchy does. When you think about what they do when they colonize a country, they make sure that the people in that country that they've colonized don't know their history, don't know their rights. So as I say, it's our job to get our torches out and shine those rights and that history out there. And it's a challenging job, I'm aware of that. It's looking at inclusion without exclusion. And for me, that's really important. As we discover and become more aware of other groups who have been forgotten, we add them. We don't drop somebody else, we constantly add. And that's a challenge, I'm aware of that. But we have, thanks to Lila and this amazing conference, many, many resources now that we can utilize to do that job. So that when we design a lesson, we start thinking about how inclusive is that lesson? How have we actually linked to all the different identities? When we think about books, either for the lesson or in our library, that we've actually thought about, are those books reflective of the wondrous diversity of all the people in the school and in the community? When we choose music, and music is a very powerful tool, are we again using the wide diversity of music that's available to us to push the story? Are we using language that's inclusive? Now that's a big challenge. There are lots of phrases that roll off our tongue that we've used for many years, which aren't inclusive. So thinking about the language that we use, is it inclusive? Do we need to adapt? Do we need to change? Do we need to add? And then thinking about the role models. Now I am aware that we can't all be out. We can't be out maybe as disabled. We can't be out maybe as a migrant. We can't be out maybe as LGBT. Plus, I used my white cis middle class privilege and I was out as a teacher in the 60s, but I'm acutely aware that many teachers aren't able to do that. But there is work now to enable schools to wake up. And one of the people that are helping that is our unions. And you're going to hear a bit more from unions just after me. But Schools Out was set up because the unions didn't care a damn about us. They didn't care about LGBT people or Black people or anything else. Massive change now. I'm a member of the National Education Union, and they have done amazing things. And I was talking to David Bradford Herbert, the LGBT officer for NEU, and he tells me, and this is just so heartwarming, I can't tell you how heartwarming it is, 10,000 teachers have registered themselves with the NEU as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans plus. 10,000. And the NEU have these wonderful apps that you can become a member of, and they're regional apps, they're LGBT apps for Black people and disabled people, and I'm on them, and it's just wonderful to see how teachers are talking to each other, supporting each other as teachers in the classroom, and also supporting each other with resources. They have got this wonderful fantastic pilot project called Mobilize, which has all the teachers are sharing fabulous resources. Now, Lila's pulled together this amazing conference. And when you look at what's on there, you'll see that she's enabled you to look from 0 to 100 age-wise and across the curriculum. And Daniel talked about science. Well, we've got a science workshop coming up, who's a project worker working with Schools Out, which is just grand. But there are lots of resources out there for you to be able to use. And one of them is the classroom, which I helped set up, which is something that some of you may know about. It usualizes lesbian and gay, bisexual, trans people across the curriculum. And I coined this word usualize because I think normal has really problematic connotations. So it usualizes. Now you can use usualizing not only around LGBT plus issues, but around race, ethnic issues, around gender issues, around disability and ability issues, around religious issues. So we can constantly, once you've got that mind, that concept in your mind, you can utilize that concept of usualizing so that all your lesson plans and materials are inclusive. And it's such a challenge. But what's going down at the moment is we've got the Black Lives Matter movement. We've got the decolonizing the curriculum movement. We've got the Me Too movement. So this wonderful wave of energy, predominantly coming from young people, we can go on. We can rise on that wave and utilize what's going down. The decolonizing is so important because, as I was saying before, colonization isn't just around ethnicity, it's around the whole of people and making people invisible. So they colonize around ability, around gender. And one of the things I think, it's exciting to see that we have seen some shifts. I mean, I have seen, a big shift around LGBT. I mean, when I was first teaching, there would be no possibility of a chance of a conference like this, none whatsoever. But we're here now, and we're going to be queer, and we're going to be excited, and we're going to see all these amazing resources all weekend. What a gift. And we can support each other and work with each other. And I think that's just so amazingly exciting. Those of you who don't know about LGBT History Month, it's every February in Britain. In America, it's in October. There are masses of online resources on there. And this year it was Mind, Body and Spirit, and the resources and the posters are there. Next year, we've just announced it. And if you want to know more, pick up our bulletin, which is available on the LGBT History Month website. We have announced that next year's theme is art in politics, LGBT artists who are working in politics. Really exciting. And we've chosen our 5 artists: Doris Brabham-Hatt, Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Marc Agur, and Fior de Henrique. So it's a very international group of artists. The other exciting thing that we're doing in LGBT History Month is enabling teachers and students to work together. This year, we put out a competition. Some of you will know that we have a badge every year that we sell. It's part of the way that we keep ourselves functioning. We don't have a core grant, so we sell badges. And that was this year, it was designed by a young person. We had a national competition and some people joined in, and it was a young person from the Proud Trust who also do wonderful free resources. So look out them as well. Next year, we will be doing the same thing. So keep looking at the website. Get yourself the bulletin, because it'll be a much bigger competition next year. And it's really exciting way to link with your students, who are, of course, our students. When we're working with them, they are really struggling to find out who they are, what their identity is. And if they look in a mirror and they can't see themselves reflected, it's much harder. So our job is to give them that mirror where every part of themselves are reflected back. Everything has been amazing from people who've spoken before. I'm so grateful to Pearson's, so grateful to the work that Martin's been doing. It's wonderful to see Daniel. I mean, it's just incredible what people are doing. And I think you can't leave this weekend without recognizing that you have resources, you have knowledge, you have inspiration, and you have people that you can go to and talk to. So do consider, maybe, if you've got the time and the energy, maybe do a little donation, because it would be just wonderful that we continue this work. And it's really hard to do it. So I can't tell you how grateful I am to Lila for keeping on this. Be torches, get out there, get your torch out there on Monday, shine the light, be inclusive, not exclusive. You've got the skills, you've got the resources, you've got the confidence, and this weekend will enable that all to happen. Have a wonderful conference. And of course, happy Pride.